Howdy there, folks. I am back with another tutorial on kind of overthinking the Navy, and I'll say I intend to keep this one short, and I really, truly do intend to keep this one short, but I've probably said that in a lot of tutorials, and then it goes 60 minutes. So to try to keep this short, I'm just going to stick on one topic, and that is the topic of perk selection for the creation of various types of fleets. And I'm going to start off by giving you what sounds like contradictory advice, and it kind of is, but I would also say that it isn't. The first is, don't overthink this too much. And yet, I'm going to spend the entire tutorial pretty much overthinking this too much. But my point is that the way this game works is, you can create new fleets pretty much all the time. And there's very little cost, as far as I can tell, to doing so. And all you got to do is move around existing ships, and boom, you have yourself a new fleet. So if you pick wrong in terms of your perks, it's really never that big of a deal. But if you're like really fretting this, I would say that maybe not having something like amphibious attack might actually be, like, not having it on any of your fleet might be one of those things you would be like, oh, I actually need to do something about this. But otherwise, you can usually just wait till you build up XP and choose it as a third perk, or just ignore it altogether, because the Navy is, I would say secondary, but it's probably really tertiary to this campaign or to any campaign at best. Now, as I go down the road of overthinking this, the order in which you select perks for fleets, I mean, it certainly matters. It'll certainly matter for how quickly you're going to be able to perk up. Fleets tend to spend most of their time kind of sitting around doing nothing. So what can you do during that time? Blockade. And there are a number of blockading related perks. Let's see, I've chosen the Atlantic Blockading Squadron. And sure enough, the Blockading Squadron 1 is one of those perks that levels up through blockading. Supply Colliers, which I'm going to talk more about. I think I hated on this in my original naval tutorial. And man, after you do some testing and actually learn about what you're speaking about, sometimes you really change your opinions. And now I'm a full-on convert to Supply Colliers. Sea Raiders is, at this point in the game, based on the recent testing I've done, Sea Raiders doesn't actually work. So I think in general it's probably worth taking, but this is the middle of November of 2022, and I cannot recommend you take the Sea Raiders perk because I've tested it, and it appears not to have any effect on import prices. I don't really feel like talking that much more about it. I just told the devs about it. We'll see if we get a reaction and a fix. I think probably, but theoretically, Sea Raiders is fine. It works through blockading these trade nodes specifically. It won't work on blockading other things, but I can't recommend taking it right now unless and until they fix it. I was telling you all of this, and this was a long kind of excursion from where I meant to be, because blockading is just the easiest to accrue XP for. But it's not the only thing you're going to look to perk up, but there are a number of perks that do it. So as you can see here, there are also quite a few that don't use blockading to perk up. And I think the ones that are more situational, I mean, I'm of two minds. If you don't really think you're going to use them in the near future, just choose one that relies on blockading, get within blockade range of some enemy port, set yourself to blockade and do it. Torpedoes is one of those, you got to pay attention to when all of these kind of level up. So torpedoes is very specific. You have to have a fleet that's ramming during naval battles. If you have a fleet that has no ships with a ram, I really would never take torpedoes. Mortar boats and level up by bombarding seems to be pretty general. It seems to apply certainly when you're attacking forts, and the language in these and the files don't really make it clear as to whether this also takes place in combat, but it seems to. But certainly attacking forts, when that happens, the mortar boats will go up. Supply colliers is just so good because pretty much, I mean, blockading and bombarding, it's like if you're not doing those two things as a ship, you're probably sinking. And so it's really easy to get XP, particularly blockading is the safer way to do it. But if you're also going to take it and bombard it, supply colliers is your thing. Balloon barge, level up by bombarding, again, is what it says. That's what it says. All right, fine. I don't quite understand. I know I don't understand line lights from the description. It says combat efficiency. What the heck efficiency means? I know what it means literally, but I don't know what the game means it to mean. So in the dark, plus 25%, but you level it up by bombarding. And it doesn't just say at night. So it would make sense that you could probably, well, I'm not going to say it makes sense, but by the description, you level it up by bombarding, but the combat efficiency thing applies plus 50%. I don't pay that much attention to limelights in the tests I've done. I think it's good because you could conceivably do at least a third, maybe close, well, probably not close to a half, but at least a third of your fighting in the dark, and so any sort of efficiency gain would sound good. I think more testing needs to be done to see if it always levels up when bombarding or if it's only bombarding done at night. If it levels up by bombarding during the day, it doesn't make sense. I don't know how line lights is helping that, but I digress. Blockading squadron by blockading, sea raiders by blockading trade nodes, amphibious attack. It's situational and it's good in those situations. I don't think it makes sense on a lot of fleets, but on the fort attacking ones, you level it up by attacking forts. And the thing is, you got to attack quite a few in order for it to level up. So put that on the fleets that you're going to engage enemy forts with. I've talked about in other videos that the ships that I think are more well-oriented to attacking forts, and so I'm not going to repeat that here. But when you've designated a fleet to be one to attack forts, I would take this one and maybe actually take this as your first one. Get the right ships in it. If you've got the ships to begin attacking forts and start doing it. If you don't, take a blockading perk first. If you continue blockading, it still builds up XP towards your second perk. I think sometimes people think it doesn't. It does. And then maybe take amphibious attack as your second. Hopefully by the time the second is done, you'll have some of the right ships to begin attacking forts, and you can start getting XP on that, because this is a really good one, so you don't have to repeatedly attack and potentially lose ships to the same fort. Blockade busters is another one of those very situational. You have to wait until the enemy has blockading fleets, and then you have to attack it. So I think of it as kind of, it's similar in its situationalness to the torpedoes, right? You got to have rams in your fleet. Here, you got to have the enemy blockading, and then it says you have to attack them. Okay, fine. But remember, it's possible that blockading fleets could move and end up attacking you, but this says you have to attack them. I digress. Battery runner. This is probably close to the most specific of perks. How it levels up. It levels up by attacking forts with ironclads on the move. So if your fleet is never going to have ironclads, remember, you can take this perk with a fleet that has no ironclads if you intend to move ironclads in it, and then have them attack forts while moving. I'm going to make the case that this is actually probably going to be one of the three perks that I think make up the most powerful fort attacking fleet. So even though it's extremely situational, the level 3, if you could get it that high, I think the level 3 of this is actually worth taking, but I can't imagine you would probably need it on more than one fleet. All right, Port Defender. This is one of the easier ones. It's not quite as easy as blockading, which is whenever you're in blockade range, just set yourself up. This is just fighting naval battles. So not forts, not blockading, but fighting navy to navy. All right, there it is. When it applies, again, pay attention. You got to be within port radius. I've tried to figure out what a port radius is. I don't know if they mean the fleet's radius to the port, or if the port has some unseen radius that captures the fleet, I just say, if you want this one and you want the perk to matter after you've got it, probably hang close to your home ports. And that's it. So actually, there aren't that many blockading ones. It's really blockading squadron and colliers for all types of blockades, C rating against specialized trade nodes. And I think I might have said erroneously in a previous video, and let me correct it because I've tested it and I know it's not right. Blockading squadron builds up XP also when you're blocking trade nodes. Again, because C Raiders is currently not working as of the middle of November of 2022, it does, from my testing, which I'm not going to show you, but I have tested this, it doesn't seem to raise import prices. But if the devs ever get it working, I could recommend it. And blockading squadron on top of that should really help you shut down those trade nodes. All right, I really want this to be a prescriptive video and try to give some concrete advice on how to build fleets that tend to specialize at different tasks. Probably the most common type of fleet you're going to have is the blockading fleet. And within it, there are only 2 perks I would say definitely take. And it is supply colliers, maybe first, and then blockading squadron. Other than that, I would say that, and this is like, duh, of course that's what you would do. You get a lot of efficiency when you get these up to level 3. It could take a while to do it, maybe 6 months or a little bit more, but to increase the blockade efficiency, again, I've gone through blockading efficiency in a previous tutorial, we don't need to do here, but plus 50% on that fleet, that is a significant buff. And my goodness, supply colliers, I hated on this, I think, in a video where I just didn't know enough of what I was really talking about. When you get it up to level 3, the movement speed debuff is not a big deal, especially for fleets that are mostly blockading. 10%, but even 30%, it's like, all right. But supply consumption down 50%. Now that I understand how expensive, or I think I understand how expensive provisions are, if you can reduce the rate at which you consume those provisions by 50%, that means, obviously, you save 50% on provisions. Those are some of the most expensive goods that you will ever buy. Very expensive. And I believe because you consume them more slowly, when you get up to level 3, your fleets should, theoretically, stay, each ship in your fleet should stay at sea 50% longer, which means you don't lose them and their blockading effectiveness or their combat effectiveness. And, this is always good, but where you have cottonclads like the ironclads, particularly the monitors that have a 20-day resupply, you can't send them far from a port because otherwise they're just always going to and from port. So with supply colliers and maybe some ports nearby, you can actually have them do the things you probably want them doing, attacking forts when they can, blockading when they can't. And this just allows them to avoid returning to port that much more often. The third perk spot is honestly a flex spot. If you have rams, maybe you'll think about torpedoes. You can read and you can go through all those perks on your own. I don't have like a definitely you should take this. I would say don't take Sea Raider perk because you really have to go out to those not only is it broken, but you have to go out to those trade nodes in order for it to start perking up experience. I think that there are better options, and if you can kind of see where you might flex a blockading fleet into something else, select that for the third one. If you're going to choose trade node blockading, it's very similar to my standard blockading squadron. You're going to set the fleet to blockade, take the Sea Raiders perk, again, when the devs have fixed it. Then I would take the blockading squadron, because it's just going to make all those ships out there all that much more efficient. And then I would take supply colliers. They're going to be far away from port. It's going to take them a long time to go out to the trade node and back. Hopefully, you're not sending a lot of ironclads out there, which are going to be spending a lot of time going back and forth to port because they have a short resupply. So I think supply colliers, whatever is out there, it can stay out there longer. I really recommend those three. So the trade node blocking is just, you know, a slightly more specific version of the kind of blockading squadron. All right, a kind of super specific and really more of a CSA oriented fleet and perk selection is the blockade fighting fleet. So I don't know the order I'm going to end up posting these, but either right before or right after this tutorial goes up, I'll post the results from my anti-blockading kind of fleet test. And the long and the short of it is that those cotton-clad rams are absolute chads in combat. They're very cost efficient. So, with a kind of CSA anti-blockading fleet in mind, I have to, and I'm assuming you'll take the cotton-clad rams, take the torpedoes. I mean, they're so efficient in vanilla, and when you get them up to level 3, now that's going to take a lot, admittedly. So what you can do is build the fleet, set them in blockade till they get torpedoes, do their thing, and what you should do is have a lot of cotton-clad rams and then cycle fresh ones in and damaged ones out. That way the fleet is always operating with pretty healthy cotton-clads. You don't really want it to get lost or destroyed or anything like that. But the Union should, with the improvements so far and the improvements I hope are to come in the Navy, they should be sending a lot of blockading fleets your way, and so they should give you lots of opportunity to build that torpedoes up, and it just makes what I think is probably one of the most efficient ships out there even more efficient. So torpedoes for me is an easy take. After that, what do you do with a fleet that is primarily designed to defend your ports, to attack blockading fleets? I would take I mean, this one. So the problem with that blockading fleet is deciding which you want to take first. Do you want to take torpedoes first, or do you want to take blockade busters first? I haven't thought and tested enough to see whether it really matters. Maybe take this one first because it's more specific. So if you set it to, if you set the fleet that you're gonna get to specialize in this to blockading, they'll get the perk XP, take blockade busters 1, and now every time, even if you have the cotton-clad rams ready to go, every time you engage a blockading fleet, you'll build up XP, and when you're not doing that, set to blockade and then take torpedoes, because torpedoes will level up anytime you're ramming. So that's any combat, whether they're blockading or not, whereas blockade busters is specifically against blockading fleets. The benefit, right? The benefit here, I think, is pretty nice, right? So fighting efficiency of blockading against blockading fleets. So from there on, right? This is level 1 all the way up to level 3. It's pretty linear in that sense. Anytime you engage a blockading fleet, your fighting efficiency, which I guess basically just means you kind of get like 10, 20, or 30% more. I'll assume damage for your cost is going to go up, and I think so this is if you can't engage the enemy fleet, or you're repairing whatever for whatever reason you can't quite engage it, but you still have one of your fleets within the enemy's blockade radius, you can still make that blockade less efficient. So to me, why not? Of course, in the end, you want to try to beat those. But again, I don't know what improvements may come when it comes to the AI's naval abilities, particularly when the AI is the Union and you're playing as the CSA. But if you're just not going to get strong enough, or it's not going to be cost effective to come out of port, then at least try to undermine the blockade with blockade busters. And the final one I'll recommend, again, for that very specialized blockade fighting fleet is this one, Port Defender. This one you can you can read, right? This is with all naval battles. Again, I don't really know what the port radius is, so I assume it's pretty much against fleets that are close to your ports. Again, whether it's your ship's radius to your port, or if your port has an invisible radius you can't see, or I can't figure out how to get it to show up. That is what it is. But that basically just makes you much better fighter. Your fleet's much better when they are that much closer to your home ports. So it's not that this won't ever work as a union. I guess if the CSA as AI goes bonkers in its naval buildup, which it could, then you might also find yourself needing these. But I think that these are more useful for that kind of specialized anti-blockading fleet. All right, one of the other fleets you could build, and I see this as either a union or a CSA player, is one that is designed. And I'd probably recommend having maybe 2 or 3 of these because of where forts are and the very real possibility you might get stuck in a combat you shouldn't have taken and lose the fleet. So you might want 2 or 3 of these fleets that are specially designed to attack forts. So if you're gonna attack forts, and you're going to do it with wooden ships, I don't generally recommend it. The tests I've done, I'm not sure if they've gone up or not at this point, but they're going to go up around the time that this tutorial goes up as well. Most wooden ships can't even take out vanilla level 1 forts. Fleet of 7 or so frigates, or 6 and 1 steam frigate, did take out a level 2, but they lost 2 frigates in there. And so it's dicey for a lot of wooden ships to take on forts. But if you want to go that route, there are some perks that can help you, and I'm going to give you a recommendation for a better fort attacking fleet that uses ironclads. But first, if you're going to go the wood route, because there is a potential advantage that if you can get some of these perks going, eventually, the wooden boats might stack up. Mortar boats is the easy one. Right, bombardment efficiency plus 25%, and you level it up by bombarding. That one's pretty obvious. The most obvious one is the amphibious attack. Right, this is what gives you a chance to capture those coastal forts, so you don't have to continuously fight them. If you don't know what happens, if you don't have amphibious attack, you send a fleet in, you can beat the fort, but then you just sit there, and eventually the fort begins repairing. And so you go sail off, and then you got to come back later, and it's good as new. And if you lost ships, it's all for naught because it's still there. And so, again, you're not going to have that many of these fleets. Probably 3 might be safe. You're going to want to go ahead and stick that amphibious attack perk on there, probably first. So that's the second one. The third one, I guess it's a bit of a flex spot. I think balloon barge is the more obvious and safer bet because it clearly relates to bombardment, which I think definitely relates to attacking forts. I mean, the top level, the top level of it, you get an intelligence buff, which is nice because intelligence is important for readiness, and a lot of the fleet-to-fleet fights end up being, they can be pillow fights, and intelligence and readiness is what determines them. This fleet is not designed to do that, but if you happen to get, say, attacked by the AI, and you need that readiness, it's there, and it will stack the bombardment efficiency on top of mortar boats. One that I think is also really good, but the phrasing is unclear as to what it means. Combat efficiency. Does that include the shooting at forts? I would say yes. And I would say that also includes engaging other ships, right? Navy versus Navy. But I think bombardment is sometimes also talked about that way, although the way I've usually heard bombardment is it seems to have the connotation that it's used against fixed targets and wouldn't perk up in a Navy versus Navy fight. But this one doesn't seem bad. You're going to be able to perk it up while doing something you're going to be doing anyways. And if you think about it, probably, depending on what time of year it is, 1/3 to 1/2 of the day is going to be in the dark. Probably at least a third. And so to have that doubled seems like a really efficient idea. These attacks on forts can last weeks and months plural sometimes. So that's not bad if you want to experiment with it, but I think if you want to play it safe, amphibious attack, balloon barge, and mortar boats are the way to go. What's a better way to attack forts? Ironclads. And in my experience, again, this is kind of towards the 61, 62 play. You want to rely on your monitors and your ironclad gunboats. And for those, it's two different perks. Yeah, you're going to do amphibious attack for all the reasons I talked about. Then, this is the one fleet where this makes sense to take. Right? This oddly specific perk, but it comes with a really, I think, good buff. You got to have ironclads, they got to be moving and attacking forts. And so you got to keep pathing back and forth by a fort. But it gives you a really nice efficiency buff, right? The level 1 here is as nice as the level 3 of mortar boats. So think about that. Not to mention the ironclads are just generally better than wooden ships when it comes to attacking forts. And then, of course, if you're able to get it up to level 3, boom. You have... It's all that much more efficient. It's like putting torpedoes on a cotton-clad ram. It's just very efficient. The final one, and I did not recommend this, just right here, supply colliers on the wooden ships. Remember, you can move ships in and out of fleets. Supply colliers is good. There's a lot of fleets it does belong on, as I've already covered. I put this on the ironclad fort attacking fleet for several reasons. First, the movement speed debuff doesn't really hurt you because you want to be engaging the others. You want to be engaging the fort. So if you're doing it more slowly, it doesn't really matter. All it does is give you a little bit more time before you got to path backwards and continue the fight until the fort falls or somehow you get beat. So the bad side, which at the top level isn't all that bad, doesn't really hurt what you want to do. Additionally, it's going to perk up by doing things you're going to be doing, right? Bombarding and blockading, again, for this fleet, that's probably 90-95% of what it's going to do. So, of course, it's easy to build up XP with that one. And then, one of the real downsides of ironclad monitors, which I otherwise really like, is that they have a 20-day limit on being out to sea before they got to come back and reprovision. Ironclad gunboats are barely better at 40 days. So if you're operating, especially as the Union, you're operating far from port, by the time the ironclads get out there, they're not super fast. Those two in particular are not fast. They're not going to have long before they got to turn around and they got to go back to port really far away and restock their supply. So supply colliers, reducing the rate at which they consume supplies means that they can stay out to sea longer. That should help you take some of those forts that are near ports, like Port Royal, and then you should be able to use that and a couple other places some folks have mentioned, and I tend to agree, where you can likely do this. I think around Wilmington there's also an opportunity, and you can kind of port hop by taking certain forts, and supply colliers will allow you to stay out to sea long enough to do that, and it just lets you keep your costs low. If you want a jack of all trades fleet, like if you just don't know, you've specialized most of your fleets, you think, but you're not really sure. I think it's never a bad idea to throw supply colliers on there first or second, and then follow it up with blockading squadron, and then just leave the final perk for the kind of flex spot as to where it's going to end up going. If you run out of ideas, that would be my recommendation. All right, this has not been brief, true to form, but hopefully it has been as comprehensive as, it is as comprehensive as I can do, and I hope it helps you as you think about how to use your fleets to accomplish what you want them to do.